theyeshiva.net.
Okay, welcome everybody. I know that we started a Maamar, Parshas Vayakal, Torah Parshas Vayakal, Chumi Yitchem Trumal Hashem, and we didn't finish it. We're middle. We only had 2 classes on it. But since this week and next week are the preparations for Pesach, so I wanted to learn a specific Maamar that's focused on Pesach and on the Seder as a preparation for Zman Cheruseinu, for the Festival of Liberation. So, Bais Hashem, we have to come back to that Maamar, Bli Neder, about Mammal Kalalman and Tzav Kalalman. But we'll now learn this Maamar. It's a Pesach Dika Maamar. Okay, today's class is dedicated by Adam Farkas in honor of, as he writes, my Eishes Chayil Tamar, for being such a role model for me and our children. Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila. Thank you very much. The class is also dedicated by the Sirota family in honor of the birthday of Rivka Bas Brine Yente, for a Shnas Bracha V'Atzlocha, Riches Yom B'Shanam Toivus, Simchis, Yiddische, Chassidische Nachas from children, your children and grandchildren. Amen. Happy birthday, Mazel Tov. Also dedicated in memory of Yitzchak Moshe ben Yirmiyahu Halevi, whose yahrzeit was the 23rd of Adar, and Rina Freidel Bas Yirmiyah Halevi, whose yahrzeit is on the 4th day of Nissan, Daled Nissan. 2 young adults with special needs and very holy souls, Tehei Zechronam Levracha, dedicated by their mother, Rezi Mendel Tauber. Tehei Nishmasam HaKadosh Tzura B'Tzur HaChaim. May they remain an eternal source of inspiration and love and compassion and blessings for you and all of us and the whole family. Okay. So as you see in the headline of this Maamar, it says, Leil Beis de Chag HaPesach Tovshin Chav Zayin. That's the date. The second night of Pesach in the English calendar would be 1967. And it starts off with a piece of the Haggadah. Now this is a piece of the Haggadah where many people are already exhausted. Because they're exhausted, so therefore, we often go it through very fast. But this is going to be a focusing on a very powerful section of the Haggadah, and everybody knows it as the Dayenu. It starts off with Kammah Maalos Toivus Lamakam Aleinu. Ilu Hoitzianu Mimitzrayim, etc. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. Okay. Just a little bit about the background of this Maamar, Tovshin Chav Zayin. It's a Maamar by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The second night of Pesach. Now the date would seem a little strange. When did he say a Maamar the second night of Pesach? Leil Beis de Chag HaPesach. Everybody makes a Seder, at least if you're not in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe would conduct a Seder in his father-in-law's home. Previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rayatz, even after he passed away, he would still go up there and do the Seder there with a small crowd. His mother-in-law was there, and his Rebbetzin and some Chassidim were there. And after the Seder, the second night was a longer Seder, but after the Seder, the Rebbe would come down to Shul and have a Farbrengen. It would start around 1 o'clock in the morning, and it would go for a few hours. That Farbrengen, he explained a lot of pieces of the Haggadah, including, say, a Maamar. So this was a Maamar on the piece of the Haggadah that was said around 1:40 in the morning. Just imagine people drank 4 cups and had a whole Seder, and then at 1 in the morning started a Farbrengen the second night of Pesach. So this is from that night, Tovshin Chav Zayin. Literally in the middle of the night, around 1:40 in the morning, after the Seder. So he begins with that piece in the Haggadah where we say, Kammah Maalos Toivus Lamakam Aleinu. How many great virtues Hashem did for us. And he starts off with a whole list of, if he would have taken us out of Mitzrayim and not penalized the Egyptians, Dayenu. And he goes through everything, right? If it would have been this without this, Dayenu. If it would have been this without this, Dayenu. One of the pieces there is, Ilu He took us out of Mitzrayim, but he wouldn't have split the sea. Dayenu would have been enough. Ilu kara lanu esayam, v'lo yaviranu b'soiche b'cherava dayenu. If he would have split the sea, but not allowed us to pass through it in dry land, dayenu would have been enough. So say, ilu nasan lanu es b'maynu v'lo kara lanu esayam dayenu. He would have given us their money, but not split the sea would have been enough. If we would have split the sea and we wouldn't pass through it through dry land, it would have been enough. If he would have passed us, if we would have gone through the sea in dry land, but he wouldn't have submerged our oppressors in it, they wouldn't have drowned, dayenu, it would have been enough. If he would have done it, but not given us our needs in the desert 40 years, it would have been enough. All the dayenus. So the Rebbe asks, you have to understand something. When you say dayenu, it means the first thing would be enough, would be sufficient. Right? The next was like extra credit, the icing on the cake. The cake is good. But maya tayelas bazesha karalana sayam ilaverana b'seicha. What would be the tayelas, the point of splitting the sea, if we wouldn't go through it? I mean, in terms of the the spectacle, it would have been very nice. But what benefit would there be to the Jewish people, right? If you say he took us out of Mitzrayim, he gave us their money, he didn't split the sea. For example, the Egyptians wouldn't have chased after the Jews. He didn't need Kriyas Yamsuf. They could just move on. Fine, I understand. He could have made a Parish shouldn't pursue the Jewish people, and there shouldn't be a Kriyas Yamsuf, and everything would have been fine. Wow, you made a Parish should pursue us, and there's a Kriyas Yamsuf, and we got away from him. Gewaldig. But now you're saying something else. If there would have been Kriyas Yamsuf, for what? We wouldn't have gone by. It's just, oh wow, I know how to split water. They knew about Hashems. They saw the 10 Malchus already before. So what's the idea? Ilu kara lanu. All the other dayenus are something that taken dayenu. Something would have been accomplished. If Hashem would have taken us out of Mitzrayim without any Malchus, without any miracles, okay, dayenu, you got out of slavery. The fact that it was with all the extraordinary miracles, gewaldig. But here, what's the tayelas? Ilu kara lanu esayam, v'lo yaviranu b'seicha b'cherava. So what's the point? Just to split the sea? What happens? Let's now watch. So the Egyptians are behind us. We're standing there. The sea was split, and we're not passing through it. What would be the point in that? This is a big question. The Mefarshim of the Haggadah has a lot of Mefarshim. Many ask this question. What's the dayenu here? For what? The whole point was the Jews went through, they got away from the Egyptians, and then the Egyptians ran after them, they drowned them. So v'hinei Mefarshei Haggadah, the Mefarshim of the Haggadah, Pirshu, they all give this answer. And you have here 3 Mefarshim. He says in footnote 3, Zevach Pesach. Zevach Pesach is a commentary on the Haggadah by the Abarbanel. Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, the great finance minister of Spain in the 15th century, who left with the exiles of Spain 1492, he wrote a commentary on the Tanakh and on the Haggadah, many other svarim. He was a prolific writer. He ran to Portugal, then to Italy, passed away in Italy. So he has a commentary, Zevach Pesach. It's a very long commentary on the Haggadah. He asked this question. Then you have Avudraham, Rabbeinu David Avudraham, also wrote a commentary on the Haggadah and on the whole Siddur. And the Maharal of Prague. So they all ask this question. And they give an answer, a very interesting answer. They say, Hadiyuku lo yaviranu b'soiche b'cherova ela b'ma'at mayim moitit gam ozdayenu. It doesn't mean he would have split the sea and not taken us through. That taka would be pointless. What's the dayenu? Split the water, fine, shikoyach. For what? It means he would have taken us through, but it would have been a muddy trek. You know, there's 2 types of hike. There's a hike on dry land. There's a hike. You're getting muddy and dirty and filthy. That's what it says. We would have passed through, but it wouldn't have been becherava. Cherava means dry. It wouldn't have been dry land. It would have been mayim. It would have been muddy. You know, mayim is water. It would have been watery on the bottom. It would take a split, but there would still be water on the bottom. You get your pants wet. And it could have been a little tit. It would be a little muddy, so you don't only get wet, you get dirty. You know that feeling, right? when you go on a hike and it's raining and there's slush and there's dirt and you fall, etc. Gamos dayenu. What have also been dayenu? Taka the pants, the robe, whatever they were wearing, I don't know if they had pants. The robe would have gotten a little dirty. The feet would be uncomfortable, but dayenu, at least we got it to the other side. Ve'enei moving. So it's a very geschmack answer. It's a geschmack answer, but ve'enei moving. It's still not so clear. First of all, you can ask a balabatish a question. Is that really something to mention? I mean, somebody gets away from their enemies and they save their life. You know, it's like the old joke they say that a grandmother took her granddaughter to the beach. And the granddaughter was playing by the beach, and unfortunately a tide came and swept the kid away into the ocean. The grandmother started to scream, Ribono shel olam, God, what are you doing? What are you doing? Give me back my child. And sure enough, the wave came and spit out the girl who came running out, laughing. She picks up her head, she said, she had a hat, where's the hat? Right. So a person gets out of a death camp, gets out of Mitzrayim, gets away from it. It was a little muddy. Michael the mud. But even if you want to say that's not a question, because, the fact that it was a little nicer, was a little geschmack, is also something. But ve'enei muvan, sharei al pi zahav v'lo l'meimer v'lo yavironu b'soicha b'yabosha v'lo b'cherava. But the truth is, if you know the diktuk, the word would be wrong. It said, why? In Hebrew, there's two words for dry, charva and yafsha. By the Mammal, it says in Noach, the first month, Tishrei, according to many opinions, charvu, the face of the earth became dry, but it wasn't yafshu. The second month, Yavshu, Rashi says, Nasa grid kil chassid, became solid earth. You could walk on it, you could step on it. In the first month, it was dryish, but still, it didn't have the solid stability. Yavsha is more than charv. And here the whole point was that it's not just the sea split. It's not just that you could walk through. It was mamish dry. It was like regular, like a walk on the road, like a walk on the highway. It was comfortable. You didn't get wet. So then the word should have been used, leviranu b'soichai, not b'charava, which still means there's a little, it's not completely dry. It should have been b'yabosh, if that's the whole point of the Bal Haggadah. Based on this, it seems that the proper thing to say would be shekavanas Bal Haggadah litin shvach b'fnei atzmei al zeh shekara lanu asayam afilu yivlo leviranu b'soichai klal. The intention of the Bal Haggadah, of the author of the Haggadah, is actually the way he writes it, to give a special praise for the fact that Hashem would have split the sea, even if we would have not passed through it at all, not in dry land, and not even as wet land. And that's why he doesn't say the word Bayabash, he says the word B'charav. But this needs an understanding. What would be the benefit of splitting a sea without the Jewish people passing through it? And on this we're saying a special dayenu. If you would have split the sea for us and you would have not had us go through dayenu. It seems it's fine, it's a nice thing. So if there would have been a volcano, if there would have been a major earthquake, if there would have been a flying star again and again and again, it's all nice, beautiful things in nature and breaking of nature. But what's the connection to the Jewish people? What would they have from it? This is the only dayenu that has this question, because it seems, Ilu kara lanu sayam, you split the sea, for what? And nothing happens. We just look at it, okay? What's the dayenu? Clear the question. Bais. V'hine diyuk ze medaya kvet kedushas admurhem tzoi b'maamar dibur amaschel beikei hayam lifnei Moshe. This question, this diyuk, is one that the Mittler Rebbe, Admurhem tzoi is the Mittler Rebbe. He was the son and successor of the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, Rabbeinu Doiv Ber, known as the Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe. So he has a maimer beikei hayam lifnei Moshe in his svarim, and over there he asked this question. Shemevi Mashakosov, he brings another pasuk in Tehillim. And we say this also in the Seder, in Haidu Hagadol, all the Kilaylam Chazdos. Tehillim Kuf Lamed Vav, which many also say Shabbos morning, all the Kilaylam Chazdos. It says, L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim, Kilaylam Chazdoi. Vehevi Yisrael B'soichoi, Kilaylam Chazdoi. V'nir Pare V'chele V'yamsuf, Kilaylam Chazdoi. L'moyle Cham V'minik Kilaylam Chazdoi. Here you see the same thing. So here you see that the author of the Agad already had a source. Because let's look at this. What does it say? L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim, which means he cut the sea. Goyze means cut, like Gzeira, L'gzor. He cut the sea into Gzorim, into pathways, into parts, meaning he split the water into pathways. His kindness is everlasting. The next piece is Vehevi Yisrael b'soiche Kilei Elam Chazda. He passed the Jews, he brought the Jews through with Kilei Elam Chazda. Now what do you see from here? Two separate things. Shemashmos HaKosov, the indication of this pasuk in Tehillim is, this is Tehillim Kuf Lamed Vav, pasuk Yud Gimel and pasuk Yud Dalet. And it's two separate psukim. So you have pasuk Yud Gimel, L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim Kilei Elam Chazda, and then you have pasuk Yud Dalet. Just want to make sure I got the psukim right here. Yeah. L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim Kilei Elam Chazda, pasuk Yud Dalet, Vehevi Yisrael b'soiche Kilei Elam Chazda. Shemashmos HaKosov, Shekol Davar Hu Chesed B'fnei Atzmai. Each one of these aspects is a unique and self-contained act of kindness. Cutting the sea into parts, meaning sectioning it off into pathways, is a chesed, and then in addition, so you already see in Tehillim, now you can ask the same question. What's the kilaylam chazdi that you split the sea? I mean, very nice, God could split the sea, he also created the sea. He didn't only split it, he created it. Right? That's why he could split it. You create it, you could split it. But he says, Kilaylam Chazdi, it's a separate chesed, L'goyze. L'chayre, David HaMelech should have written, L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim, Vehevi Yisrael b'soiche, Kilaylam Chazdi. That was the point. You split it so that we can go through. If you wouldn't have split it, we couldn't go through. We would drown too. You split it, so now we got away from the Egyptians. Now you could say something else. Even if they wouldn't have drowned, it would have been Dayenu. At least we got away, we're free, we're liberated. They can't come through. Gewaldig. The second thing is, you drown them too. I get that. But here you see that the L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim itself is a Kilaylam Chazda. U'meisiv ba'amayim, the mitzvah Rabbi Shazo, gam ha'sherim ba'agoda. Kammah Maalos toivus l'makam aleinu, ilu karalonas yom le'aviranu b'seiche b'chirava, the masha noistim shvach l'makam al kol toiva b'fnei atzmai, mashma, shekriyas Yamsuf k'shalatzmai u'chesed v'toiva, gam lulei ha'avodas Yisrael. So the mitzvah Rabbi says that the Haggadah's source is from this pasuk. The Baal HaGodah didn't just invent this chesed on his own. He looked at Tehillim. And in Tehillim he already saw that David HaMelech specified two separate things. One is Kilaylam Chazdoi, L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim. Then there's another Kilaylam Chazdoi, Vehevi Yisrael b'soiche. So you can't have tightness to the Baal HaGodah. Ilu kara lanu esayam v'le'avranu b'soiche b'chirava dayenu. It is dayenu. V'haraya, it's Kilaylam Chazdoi, just on L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim. From here we understand also she'ef letaretz ketiretz hamafarshim anal sha'pirushu ilu lo yehaviranu b'soiche b'cherava ela b'mat mayim oitit she'nei b'pasuk nema v'hevi Yisrael b'soiche stam v'lo niskir klal she'hevi Yisrael b'soiche b'cherava davke u'mizem muchich lahedye she'legoyze Yamsuf L'gzorim u'inyan shel chesed afilu ilu lo yehavi Yisrael b'soiche klal v'zeu she'noistim shvach l'mokem al zeh she'kara lanu ayam afilu ilu yehaviranu b'soiche b'chlal. From here you also see that the Mefarshim, the Maral, the big Mefarshim, the Abarbanel, the Avod Raham, there's something missing here because according to them, the whole Mila would have been, he would have split it and we would have walked through. It's just, it would have been a muddy trek. It would have been an uncomfortable hike. We would have to change our socks afterwards, after Kriyas Yamsuf. They didn't have socks then. But whatever it be, we have to change our sandals, have to change our pants, change our kapote, change our robe. It would have gotten a little muddy. That's the whole vart, right? And that's why it says, Le'aviranu b'soichoi b'cherava. But if you look into Tehillim, then he should have said, L'goyze Yamsuf L'gzorim, Vehevi Yisrael B'soicha b'cherava. That's the Kiloilam Chazda. Over there he doesn't say it. He just says V'hevi Yisrael b'soicha. That means the first Kiloilam Chazda is not for the Jewish people passing through. It's just for the splitting of the sea in and of itself without anything else. So now when you come to the Haggadah, it would seem that it would follow the same pattern of thinking. That L'goyzer Yamsov L'gzadim is a chesed even if they would have not passed. And therefore in the Haggadah also, Ilu Kara Lanu Esayam V'lo Yavironu B'seicha B'cherav. It doesn't mean we would have gone through, but it would have been muddy. It means we would have not gone through at all. And the question then is, we're back to square one, what would be the point in that? That wouldn't seem to be a dayenu that fits into the Pesach story. In fact, there's an additional diuk, an additional proof from another pasuk in Tehillim. The first pasuk is Kuf Lamed Vav, all the Haidus. All the big Kiloilam Chazda is called Halal HaGadol. But there's another pasuk in Tehillim, another interesting pasuk in Tehillim. This is Samach Vav, Tehillim 66. Pasuk says, Hafach Yam Liyabasha. Hashem transformed the sea into dry land. Ben Nahar Yavru Beregel. Through the river, they passed with their legs, with their feet. Shabnis Mechabai. Over there we will rejoice in him. Shalafi Echad HaPirushim Koi Kol HaPasuk Al Kriyas Yamsuf. Now some of Farshim, you have the Even Ezra, the Metzudas, the Malbim, they discuss this. In the beginning he starts off with sea, and he ends off with a river. A sea and a river are not the same thing. So they say the first half is talking about Kriyas Yamsuf, the second half is talking about when they passed through the Jordan River on the way into Eretz Yisrael, under Yehoshua. Hafach Yam Liyabasha is the first thing, Kriyas Yamsuf. Ben Nahar Yavru Beregel is a second event by the Yarden. Other Pirushim is the whole thing is referring to Kriyas Yamsuf. But now let's look at this. When you look at this, Hafach Yam Liyabasha, Ben Nahar Yavru Beregel. So you see what's happening. In the second one, he talks about the Jewish people passing through. The first one, he just says Hafach Yam Liyabasha. Now, if it's talking about two separate rivers, Bechlal, the first is the sea, the second is the river. It means in the first one, he didn't even talk about the Jewish people passing through. The second one, he says, at least we passed through. The first one, he doesn't even talk about passing through. Here you see again what? That the Hafach Yam Liyabasha itself is a story. Including if you say the whole thing is talking about Kriyas Yamsuf. Tehine gam b'pasuk zeh mashma shehafach Yam Liyabasha winyan b'fnei atzmai. Al derech l'goyzer Yamsuf l'gzadim. V'noisef l'zeh yashnein davaros b'nei Yisrael b'noi yavru b'regel al derech v'avi Yisrael b'seicha. Here too, there's two separate things. Hafach Yam Liyabasha, b'nar yavru b'regel, and he takes a break in between. He even separates with the word b'nar. It's two separate things. So here we come back to our original question. What is the benefit? What is the toyelis? What is the purpose? What is the outcome, the positive outcome of transforming the sea into dry land? Outside of what? Of the nation of Israel having the ability to pass through the Yamsuf, which is the heavy Yisrael b'seicha. And yet the Baal Haggadah wants us to give a dayenu just on Kriyas Yamsuf, even if we would have never become part of that experience. He continues in the Maamar of the Metallica. In order to understand this, we first have to understand the difference between Yam. Yam is, of course, the sea, and Yabasha is the dry land, spiritually speaking. Which you can understand from the difference physically. As we always learn very often, also in the previous Maamar, there's something called Hishtalshalus. Hishtalshalus means everything in the physical world is simply a mirror of the spiritual world. It's not two separate worlds. It's a continuum. The question is only which level of reality. On one level it's spiritual, and then it assumes on another world a physical incarnation. So when we look at sea and Yabasha, we know that it's two different realities, and they speak to us in different ways. And they have different purposes, and different opportunities, and different challenges. But that's a reflection of Yam and Yabasha on a spiritual level. What's the energy of Yam spiritually? What's the energy of Yabasha spiritually? In order to understand this whole idea of Ilu Karalano Sayam, that's what we first have to understand. And then we'll be able to appreciate the words of the Tehillim and the words of the Balagoda. And why it's two separate things, and why it's a Kiloi Lam Chazde separate, and why it's a Dayena. And this begins the explanation now. You see, he trusts the B'Shaim B'Simchiv and Far the beer, because you know it's going to be good. Shain Dayenu, Dayenu. Hine Yam v'Yabasha Koi al Alman Stimmen de Loyes Gallion v'Alman de Isgallion. This is in the language of Kabbalah. Yam and Yabasha represent two types of realities, two types of worlds. When we say a world, we mean a reality, a universe, a way of operating. It's like a whole system. Every universe is a system. So you have what's called Alman Stimmen. Stimmen is from the word Sasum, Satum, Sasum. Alman Stimmen means concealed worlds, the Loyes Gallion that are not revealed. Like when you say this is a Soid Sasum, it's plugged, it's blocked, it's hidden. Right? That's called Alman Stimmen, hidden worlds, the Loyes Gallion. And then you have Alman Gallion. What does it mean? What does it mean hidden worlds that aren't what? If you're talking about them, why are they not revealed? So they are revealed. If you tell the secret, it's not a secret anymore. What's pshat? It's not revealed. What does it even mean? So he says, Yam Koi al Alman Stimmen. The world of Yam represents spiritually Alman Stimmen, which means concealed worlds. What does it mean, concealed worlds? It doesn't mean concealed worlds that it's a secret, that they didn't write about it in the newspaper. And if they do write it about it in the newspaper, it's still going to be a concealed world. It's defining the nature of reality. That's Yam. Shahabruyim sheboyhem amalachim shenekroyim nune Yam. In Kabbalah, in Zohar, there's an expression, nune Yam. Nune in Aramaic are fish. Like you would say, doge hayam, in Aramaic, it's nune Yam. The fish of the Yam, the fish of the sea. When you look at the Yam, you can't see what's happening under the Yam. It's a concealed world. We know that there's a lot of action happening under the Yam. In fact, the Gemara says in Chulin, Kol ma sheyesh b'Yam yesh b'Yabasha. In other words, under the Yam you have a whole ganze Welt and a lebendige Welt. It's action-filled, but from the perspective of the outsider on top, you don't see anything. Why? Because the waterbed, Kamayim layam mechasim, the waterbed covers everything, unless you go down. You go scuba diving and you make a descent into the depth of the Yam, you don't see what's happening. In that sense, it's a concealed world. In the Yabasha and dry land, we see each other. It's visible. I look outside, I see clearly what is. Here's one tree and here's another tree. Here's one animal, here's one animal. Here's one person, here's another person. Here's a table, here's a tissue box. In the Yam, Kamayim layam mechasim, it's all concealed. Liyoyz bedugmas dogim shebeyam shenimtsoyim tamid b'sei chayam shu mokim chayusam. In this sense, the creatures that are in the Yam spiritually are like the fish in the water, and the fish in the water are submerged always inside the Yam. That's the place of their life. And you say to Mizah, not only that, shegam yoidim umargishim shayam mokim chayusam. Not just they are, they know that they are. The fish will do anything instinctively to get back into the water. When you take a fish out of the water, you see how it's flopping because instinctively it wants to live. And it knows the only place where it could live is submerged in the water. The famous Gemara in Brachas, Daf Samach Aleph, the Gemara tells the story when Papas told Rabbi Akiva why he's teaching Torah when the Romans have outlawed it. Rabbi Akiva gave the famous mashal, right, of the fox, the shual, who told the fish, what do you have to run around in the water terrified and free? Come out of the water and I'll settle you in a beautiful habitat. And we're going to have a wonderful life like you parents and my parents had. That was the shual, the fox's idea to the dog. And what did they answer? They said, Ma b'makim chayuseinu madach, when we're in the place of life. Things could be scary because of all the fishermen. If we leave, the moment we leave, it's a certain death. So the fish are saying this is makom chayusenu. That's the definition of a fish. The fish is aware based on the level of awareness of a fish. But the brain of the fish knows you stay in the water if you want to live, and the instinct for survival is deeper than any other instinct. It's also an expression in Gemara in Avodah Zarah Daf Gimel. The moment they ascend to Yabasha, they right away die. There's nothing else. What does this represent spiritually? Al derech ze b'malachim. This is explained. This is the concept of a malach. What does it mean, a malach? An angel is it's a certain type of reality, a certain type of identity. Sha'imdim tamid bebitul legabe ha'ira eliki shu mekayram shemeir v'nirgish ben begilui. It's a type of nivra. It's a type of being that's similar to a fish. It lives in the yam. What's pshat similar to a fish? It's always in a state of oneness. It's always in a state of connection. It's always in a state of bittul. There's absolutely no ego and separateness. Legabi, the divine light, which is the source, which is felt in it, always in a revealed way. So when you go to the fish, they're always submerged in the water. When you look at the water, it's hard to see fish. Why? They're invisible. Why are they invisible? They need their oxygen. We need our oxygen. Our oxygen is here. That's true. We take in our oxygen, but you could see every creature. In the sea, you don't see the dogim. They're somewhat invisible. What does that represent spiritually? A type of nivra who experiences themselves not as self. They experience themselves as simply a continuum and a mirror and an embodiment of the divine energy. And it's conscious who they are. It's their consciousness. What's the opposite? Yabasha koya almond is galya. Yabasha represents revealed worlds. What's that revealed worlds? Sha'abruyim shebemim bedugmas abruyim shebeyabasha. The creatures in Yabasha are like the creatures in dry land. Shein bepirud b'makim chayusam shehu ha'afar. K'maymer hakal hayam in ha'afar. We all need the earth. Everybody needs the earth. You can't live if there's no earth. It says in Koheles, hakal hayam in ha'afar. Everything came and comes from the earth. We call it Mother Earth, right? So it's also a source of our life. But in order to live, you have to be separated from the earth. If you put a person says, since we all need the earth, and since earth is mommy, so you know what, let me go into mommy. Let me go into the earth. What does that mean? When do you put people in the earth? Afterwards, after they pass away. Offer ata, vel offer tashuv. So to put a person inside the earth means actually that it's already after 120 years. That's when they go to the earth, after their neshama left. Life means that you're not in the earth. You're separate from the earth. You could be standing on the earth. You could be not even standing on the earth. You could be completely separated from the earth. So let's understand this. What spells life for the fish spells death for the terrestrial creature, for the creature of earth. What spells life for the creature on earth spells death for the fish. The fish wants to be covered in the water, covered in the source of life. Don't see me. If you see me, it's not good. If I become too visible, it's death. For the creature of dry land, it's the opposite. If I become invisible, it's death. My life is the fact that I'm visible, I'm conspicuous, I'm not buried chalila in the earth. That's the end of it. You're outside, you're separate. I could see you as a self-contained being. What does this mean spiritually, what does it mean? Spiritually, it's not a question of physically if you're submerged or not. It's a question of consciousness. It's a question of identity. The definition of nuneyama, of creatures that are fish of the sea, the definition is the invisibility of them. If they become visible, that's death. Why? Because what's the definition of life? That I don't exist. The definition of life is that my entire I is submerged in the divine I. It's the divine life that flows through me. There's the source of life, and it flows through me. I'm an embodiment of it. The doc says, don't look at me. If you see me, I'm dead. Don't punish me. Don't look at me. Some people live from attention and some people die from attention, you understand? Some people, the more validation you give them, they become more life because they're detached. And some people, the more validation you give them, the more it's squeezy. Right? The worst thing for Moshe Rabbeinu was that he had to become a leader. He had to become visible. Moshe is min hamayim, he came from water. Do me a favor. The Baal Shem Tov was told that because he did something wrong, so therefore his punishment is that he has to reveal himself. The whole Baal Shem Tov's revelation, right? For the world, it was a reward. For him, it was like, Tumid HaTayva. Why? The Nekuda is that the fish needs to be covered. That's Pshat Alman Stimmen. Alman Stimmen doesn't mean it's a secret world because nobody knows about it. It's essentially concealed. It's a type of reality that it lives through not being conspicuous. Why? Because the definition of life is that there's no I. That the I is submerged in the divine I. So the very I is just a continuum of the divine energy. The Eira Eliki vibrates through it in such a revealed way that the very identity of that being is, I'm a continuum of the divine I, that's who I am. The source of life flows through it, and that's what its consciousness is. It doesn't have an I outside of that. If it has an I outside of that, it's dead. Because it's detached from the source of life. It's like you cut me off. It's like you took the fish out of the water. You say, I want to turn you into a celebrity. You tell the fish, I want to turn you into a celebrity. The fish says, how are you going to do it? He says, I have to take pictures of you. So let's take you out. We'll take pictures of you, right? You understand? That's death. Keep me in the water. I need to be part of the water, in the water. Nothing outside of the water. There's even a shita in Mishnayos. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says, in Taras and Mikvayos, that it's not lahalacha, but it's a shita, that in mikveh, dogim anara chatzitza. If a fish gets stuck, let's say, inside a part of the body, so you would think it's a chatzitza. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says it's not a chatzitza. It's not a partition. Why? Because fish are considered water. Lahalacha, we don't, the Chachamim argue with him. But the very fact that there's such a svara, it's a Mishnayos. It shows you that the definition of the dag is, it's so submerged in the water, it's like water itself. It's not something separate from the water. That's the definition of Nune Yama, of Alman Stimmen. Alma Galia, the revealed world, doesn't mean revealed world we know about it. It's much deeper than that. It's not that we know about it. It's the definition of life is that it's revealed. There's something called identity, there's something called I, there's something called being. It's a whole different definition of reality. There's a huge leap between these two realities. In one reality, it's Alman Stimmen. In another reality, it's Alman Galian. In other words, there's an identity, just like a creature's here. I see, you exist. Well, you need the earth. You need the earth. You're going into the earth. No, please. Going into the earth means it's all over. You see it especially in birds. Shenemar b'hem, it says by the birds. It says in Bereshis, the bird flies on the face of the earth, at the face of the heavens, on top of the earth, under the face of the heavens. By people at least, by mammals at least, we have to walk on the earth. Until the airplane, we build buildings, we can go up, but it's connected to the earth. Until the airplane was invented, where people could spend a lot of time on an airplane, but still most of the time we spend on the earth. When you come to Oifas birds, they have that ability that they can land on the earth, but they completely fly away, even though they also need the earth. Certainly they're not in the earth and covered by earth, not birds and not people and not mammals and not trees. Trees also, they start from the earth. The seed is not planted and buried in the earth, nothing is happening. But what's the definition of a tree? That it stays under the earth. Somebody once said that yichus is like an onion, as if you had sibula. The best part of it is unter the earth. The best part of the yichus is buried, it's under the earth. Because it's after 120, yichus, the best part of it. It's not mechusa ba'afar. So b'meila, what's pshat? K'moy dogim shebiyam shemechusim b'mayim. Al derech zeh b'nivroim sheba'alman dis galyan. she'einam ptelim la'oida l'kisho m'koyna. They're not bottled, they're not nullified to the divine light, which is their source. Because that light is not manifest and revealed to them. The fish feels it, the fish knows it. It's not the fish believes it. The fish doesn't need emunah. The fish doesn't need emunah, it's instinct. It's intuitive. It's intuitive. Why? This is who I am. I'm in the water. I'm invisible. So this is all a mashal. So we have to understand what this means. That there's a type of being who does, it's not a dry land being, it's a yam being. What's the yam being? That its intuitive experience of self is divine. That is its intuitive. When we talk about the selves, we struggle, the I. Who am I? Who am I not? How am I? What am I? I told you once, somebody asked a chassid, was macht er? It was either, was macht er? He said, was kann schon a gemachter machen? Was macht er? Was kann er mechol dvorken? Was kann schon a gemachter machen? Was machst du means, what are you making? So he said, what can somebody who was made make? So the dog experiences its very I as a continuum of the divine identity. Meaning it's always in a state of bittul, of invisibility. Not because it's less alive, because its very life is a mirror and reflection of the divine. The Yabasha doesn't have that bittul to the Oid Eliki. Why? Because there's no Giliyar. That Oid is not manifested, it's not revealed. So even though it's my source too, it's my source, the oxygen in this world and this planet that we breathe in gives us life. The earth gives us life. Hakal hayim and offer. And in many ways, we're also submerged in the oxygen, just like the fish. But in terms of visibility, that's all true. We get from the earth and we're submerged in the oxygen. But visibility, what do you see? You see a mammal, you see a person. And every creature fights for its own space, self-containment. And that's the definition of Yabasha, the diversity that is visible immediately. What does it represent spiritually? That the source is not manifest in a conscious and revealed way. And therefore the definition of the I is separateness. I. Generally speaking, Midas Malchus, she mocker Isavos the Chalalim is Vanivraim, Yesh Bais Pridash in Ekran B'Shem Yam V'Yabasha. In Kabbalistic language, Midas Malchus, the attribute of Malchus, which is the source of creation of everything. Malchus has two components, Yam and Yabasha. P'chinas ha'alev, p'china ha'alev, k'sha Malchus yibaylam ha'atzilus, shaz nekras b'shem Yam. When the quality of Malchus is in the world of Atzilus, the world of Atzilus is the highest reality, the world of oneness. Over there it's called Yam. V'hi mocker li'izhavus almin stimin deloyus gali. That's when Malchus is a source for the concealed worlds that are not revealed. Again, what does it mean concealed? Concealed means that the definition of reality is not I, but I'm not. The creatures there are the fish of the sea, always in a state of bittul. Then you have the way Malchus descends into the realities known as Bri Yitzirasi in the language of Bereshis. Misham Yipared. It says there was a river that left Eden to irrigate the garden, and then from there the river splits. Misham Yipared, v'hayala arba rashim. Spiritually speaking, it means there's a place of Nahar Yotzim Eden, which is one Nahar. And then begins a split, a yipared. What does it mean, a split? Spiritually, it means you feel separate from your source. I don't look in the mirror and say, who am I? Intuitively, I am a reflection of the divine. This is an avodah. It's an avodah this is the avodah of a person. But it takes an avodah to be able to align yourself. That's what we mean in bittul. Instead of defining my I as ego, to be able to define my I as the death of ego. For the fish, the death of ego, that's when life begins. For the Yabasha person, the death of ego, what's left? Was willst du? It's very scary. It's very scary. That's why wherever there's death of ego, there's tremendous fear. Unless you're comfortable with being nuneyama. unless you're comfortable with being Nunei Yama. Death of ego could mean even a small thing. Death of ego means my ego is threatened. You say something to me, and you trigger. What trigger? Why did I get so angry? Why do I have to run away? Why do I have to explode? Because I'm afraid of death. What am I? What part is afraid of death? What's afraid of death? If the definition of my life is my ego, such a comment can kill me. Of course, I'm going to kill you first. Habala hargach. Yeah, it's a psak din. Habala hargach hashkem lahargach. Habala hargach is relative. It means dafka a gun. Habala hargach. You made a comment. You came to kill me. My ego. Hashkem lahargach. I kill you first. Egos killing egos. Ego stands for easing God out, or easing goodness out. I'm not going to say easing Google out, because that's a good thing sometimes. Right. But it's not intuitive. It's not natural. That's the chiluk. By the fish, this is who it is. This is l'chatchilu who I am. Fish doesn't have to go through a transformation. The ego of the fish is that it has no ego. That's its ego. The moment you give it an ego, you're killing it. You're killing it. Apparently, even without egos, you can kill people.
Inside the arm,
Yeah, he's asking most fish are predators. The fact there's only one kosher fish kosher fish are not predators, you know that. Only one exception, I think, the hecht fish. Why are you guys laughing? I'll tell you why you're laughing. There was a Yid, his name was Rabbi Moshe Yitzchak Hecht, Morris Hecht. Have you heard of Rabbi J.J. Hecht, the Hecht brothers, Rabbi Moshe Yitzchak Hecht. When he passed away Tovshinun Bais, 92. And I remember it was a Friday, Shabbos by the Fabrengen, the Rebbe spoke about him. And he mentioned the name of the family Hecht. And he said, Hecht is the only kosher fish that's a dog toidef. It's a devouring fish. And he said that it describes the character of the nifter, if you know the Hechts. A lot of them. But he said there's two types of devouring. You could be a predator in a negative way. You could be a predator to chap all the netzutzes of Kedusha, the sparks of Kedusha that are hidden. So you have to be toidev. Binyamin ze'ev yitraf. You have to be toidev. Vatitein teref levesa. Vatitein teref levesa. You have to chap the netzutzes. Sometimes you have to be aggressive and brazen, not to get scared of the klippah, to be able to fight through the klippah. That's the hecht. But generally, most kosher fish are not predators. So the pshat is, physically, under the water, they have an ego. That's where the metaphor is not precise. Under the water, don't start up with fish. Fish are territorial. Not all of them. But there's a whole malucha happening under the water. There's a whole, you start up with certain whales, you start up with certain sharks. There's vengeance, there's revenge. Under the water, they have an ego. But that all begins invisibly. But we'll see more about that. The Zohar has a beautiful expression. Nune yame de ozlin beyabeshta. Fish of the sea that walk on dry land. Obviously, it's a paradox. If you're a fish, it's good for comic books, fish walking on dry land. But the Zohar says, Nune yame de ozlin beyabeshta. Like turtles, you have amphibious creatures that can live both in dry land and in the sea. Like turtles, for example. Others, they take a walk on dry land, they go into the water, they live in dual realities. Physically, that's a reflection of spiritually, that you have the dual souls. But they can jump into the sea anytime. Usually, creatures of Yabash, you put them into the sea, go into the mikveh for too long, chas v'shalom, I can't live. And by the way, here we have the secret of mikveh. Why does a mikveh cleanse somebody? The idea of a mikveh is, one of the ideas of mikveh is, I'm going into a place where if I stay there for too long, I can't live. That's the idea of the mikveh. Why is that cleansing? Because that's what cleansing is. Cleansing happens when a person goes into a place that if they continue staying in that place, they can't really survive. In other words, their very self, a mikveh is a place that challenges the very paradigm of self. It's not a small thing, a mikveh. We go in for a second, boom, out. But the real experience of mikveh is an experience of kamayim layam mechasem. That's why even the hair needs to be in the mikveh. What's the difference? What's the big deal if my hair is outside of the mikveh? The woman's hair. It's because the idea of mikveh is the submergence of the self into the source of life. Essentially, that's a form of death. Thank God we don't stay in the mikveh long because we have to come back. But that's essentially what creates a transformation. You have nune yama da ozlan beyabeshta means you have nune yama, but they could walk on dry land. But essentially they come from the yam. Their place is the yam. Often they hatch in the yam. They create their nests in the yam, but they can walk on dry land. That's expression in Zohar. What does this mean? Shazui Maalos haneshamis k'v'sheyard l'matav v'neslapshim begufim. It's hafla. Malachim are fish. Creatures of our world are yabasha. And then you have nuneyam dozlan beyabeshtu. That's neshamas. That's what a neshama is. The nekuda of a neshama is nuneyam dozlan beyabeshtu. It's essentially from the sea, but it's taking a stroll through dry land. The hine neshamas Yisrael biyoyisam lamayla reim b'chinas nuneyam shabal minstim edeloyis galia. Neshamas Yisrael when they're lamayla. What do we mean when they're lamayla? Lamayla doesn't mean on the third floor. Lamayla is a state of consciousness. The neshama, when it is in its natural, pristine state, pre-embodiment, even when it's in the body, it could be lamayla. Lamayla means when the neshama is who it is. It's nuneyama, it's fish. It's an almond stimin. It's loyas gallion. The neshama never seeks attention. The neshama never seeks validation. The neshama doesn't need to be a celebrity. On the contrary, that's death. The neshama is bittul. The state of the neshama is to be or not to be. That is the question. To be or to be not, that is the question. On dry land, it's to be. In the sea, it's to be not. That's how it is. It's that's the definition of the neshama. But this soul, this fish, this dog went through a whole yedida, and it assumes the incarnation of a guf, and we don't distinguish anymore between the two. That's the tragedy of life. We redefine ourselves based on our levush, on our guf. That becomes our new definition. Kammah, like we say in the morning, neshama shenasat to be tahirahi. The neshama you've imbued in me is pure. It's pure purity. Va'afal pikein ata barasa ata yitzarta ata nafachta bi. He puts in one word there. Va'afal pikein. Usually we say it's pure. You created it. No. It's the neshama that be tahirahi. And even though it's so pure, you decided to create it. You decided to send it into bria, to make it a nivra, ata yitzarta, to make it a tzura, ata nafachta bi, to blow it into my body. Sheyardu mikimay shein ba'atzilas b'bchinas tahiri, derech ishtalshlus olam is bri yitzira siyah b'tzidat ad lo'olam hazagashmi. Here we answer a question. It should have said neshama shenasata bi, the soul, ata barasa, you created it. And then say it's pure. First tell me you created it, and then describe it. First you describe, you say it was created, and then tell me what was created. We start off, the neshama is pure, you created it. 1 second. First you created it, then it was pure. He says, no. You hear? It's two separate things. Neshama shenasata b'tayri is before barasa, because it's atzilus, it's not a bria. It's a lakus. Then, afal pikein, you decided to put it into a bara. The neshama descends, and it's a radical descent. Ad loylam haza agashmi ubiyiridasan lamatal lisabich beguf marem bedugma shara brim sheyabosh alman discount put it mekayim. And suddenly, when it comes into the guf, now you look around, me and the dog and the elephant, and the cat and the deer and the sheep and the goat were equal. Even our DNA is equal. You go to the scientists, they'll sell you 98.8% of your DNA you share with a chimpanzee. You understand? And you feel a sprach. They say there was somebody in a zoo once, and he saw an ape, and the ape was reading two books. It had Bereshis open, and Lahavdil, it had the book, The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. So the zookeeper asked the ape, "Was tust du? What are you reading?" He's saying, "I'm looking at you, the zookeeper, and I'm trying to understand, right? Am I my brother's keeper, or is my keeper my brother?" So we look at the animal, we feel kinship. We're both Bruya Yabosha. That's who I become. It's a real thing. That's who I become. And this explains also a mystery. Chassidus explains a gewaldige thing. I don't know if you ever saw an animal being born. I once saw a gazelle a few seconds after it was born. Yeah, I think 20 minutes later, it was walking. 3 hours later, it was running. A few weeks later, she ging into the chuppah. A few months later, it was already graduated college. A year later, it becomes a mommy. 2 years later. You look at people, yeah? Some of us till 50, we're still trying to figure out how to grow up. Some of us, some wait till 60. To walk everything. I don't understand. We have a tzelem alakim. Right where you're born. Boom, boom, boom. Get up. Start. Next. A year later, the chuppah. To become a person, it takes such a long time. Why? This is the answer. Chassidus explains a gewaldige inyan. Huh? Chimps also a long time. Still not what it takes a person. The answer is, for a behemoth to be born, what has to happen? The nefesh habahamis has to come into the guf. That nefesh habahamis to coming into the guf is not such a radical shidduch. It's an animal soul that goes into the body of an animal. A person's birth is you're taking a neshama from Atzilus, which is pure elikus, and you're matching it into a guf. Whoa. This is a shock beyond shock. Vikumichda. So it takes years for the neshama to descend, to become comfortable. And that's why childhood is so important. Childhood is, two things can happen in childhood. Disassociation in one direction or disassociation in another direction. Either the child learns it's a too dangerous world to feel my soul, or it's a too dangerous world to feel my body. That's the crisis of childhood. It's a too dangerous world to feel my soul, or it's a too dangerous world to feel my body. Depends what type of wounded attachment the child has. But you understand, to be able to have this neshama land and become comfortable, that's not simple. It's years and years and years of teaching the soul, here, you can come in, you can integrate, you can start walking. Because it's not pashut what a neshama is. A neshama is not from Yabosha, and a neshama is not from Yam. A neshama is nune yame, the ozlan beyabeshta. Suddenly you have to tell the soul 2 words. Choose life. Why? Because in this world, you can choose something that's antithetical to the design of life, which means to the blueprint of the Creator. You have a person who's a soul who can become corrupt, who can hurt people, who can molest people, who can destroy people, who can become a conduit for the devil. How does that happen? That's how, you have to understand, he's saying how radical the descent is. From a fish that has no eye, it turns into a monster. How does that happen? You have to say, but that's how radical the leap is. You could so forget who you are that you become sick to your core, so to speak, to your core, where you're behaving like a monster. And you have to say, choose life, don't choose death. Don't serve the devil, serve God. Der heißt, was tut sich Reb Moshe? Scharfe Inyanim, scharfe Oisius. Alzeu klolis inyan avoida de neshamas Yisrael lamata. And here you have a summation of what is avoida, what is the work of the souls down here on earth. Ashagam biyosim lamata biyabosha. Yetzlam habitel lemekayim al derech ubedugmas habitel de nunayama. The miracle of synthesis, of integration, that even when you land in dry land, the soul becomes embodied in a body. And suddenly when you look at yourself, me and the chimp are first cousins. Some will even tell you brothers. And he's even your older brother, and you have to be mekabed esavicha l'rabes achicha gadol. There's a shliach, a Chabad shliach in Texas. He once told me, a little town in Texas, he told me years ago that he was walking Yom Kippur to shul, after the break, I guess, or in the morning, and he sees a Jew. This Jew was a devout atheist and would always make fun of creation. He was everything evolution. And he says, hi, how are you? He says, where are you going? He says, heading to the temple. He says, why, you're heading to the temple? He says, Yisker. For Yisker, he says, this guy is a humorous fellow. He says, you're going to the temple for Yisker? Why? He says, I want to remember my parents. He says, you shouldn't be going to the temple. You should go to the zoo. So he started to laugh. He loved it. He said, go honor your real parents. Well, these are just the parents a few years ago. Go honor the real parents. He was trying to show him that intuitively he knew that he wasn't. The point is that even as a soul becomes embodied in the guf, and suddenly, who am I? L'cha'ira, I'm a creature of yabasha, of separateness, of detachment, not of bittul. The chiddush of a neshama is nuneyamed azlam b'yabashta. It's neshama shenasata b'tahoirehi. Even though ata barasata yitzarta nafachta, it still retains that tahoir. That's the avoid of the person. To be able in the yabasha, to be able to create the consciousness and the relationship of oneness, of inclusivity, transcending the ego and the separateness. This is an introduction to be able to understand the whole nekuda of Kriyas Yamsuf, of the Dayenu of Ila Karalano Sayam. Everybody have a beautiful day. Oxygen, a bissel Wasser. So you say there's an electrical charge that hits the water and it freezes, so then there won't be mud. And it says that the wind, which is a form of, it's a power, it's a charged force, split it. So he's saying it's congealed, like frozen. That's his proof. If the whole point would have just been that it was completely dry, it was mamish like a comfortable, like you're walking on the road. So then bring out the better word, the abasha. That's the charava, means it's not completely dry.
It said in Chazal they were complaining about
Yeah? Gavra karamas. Davud Raham says this clearly.
So was it the muddy or what? Like it wasn't muddy, right?
No, so their point is that the Dayenu is, it could have been muddy and we would have been happy. Somebody is going out of Auschwitz. Yeah, I go through mud, you know what I mean? I'm going out of a torture chamber, I'll go through mud, I'm happy. I don't mind if my suit gets dirty. It was a machaya, b'charava, it was like a schmack. We walked comfortably, slowly, didn't have to run. That's what he's saying. Appreciate the good road. That's what the Mefarshim say. But then the right word would have been yabasha, because that's much more than charava. And also you see in Tehillim he doesn't make that point. Chayrev is dry. So by the Mammal you see this charva haaretz and yafsha haaretz. So the Tehillim makes a clear distinction: the first month and the second month. In other words, as the water receded more and more, and finally the earth got dry on the planet after the Mammal. So there's yafsha, there's charva, and then there's yafsha. Until Yavsha, Noach would not go out of the Teva. Why? Because it wasn't comfortable. So according to their shitta, their pshat, Dafka should have said Yabasha. Your whole point was that the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted it should be dry, dry, dry. Not even a drop of mud, so then say Yabasha, not Charav. So it's an interesting kasha. It took so much time by the Mabel. It took a Shana Shlema.
They started to Yerushalmi said, הדog, התוילש, ים מן המים בשבס, חיים על תוילש.
Yeah, it's very nice. Schmack. Moidedik. Where's in Yerushalmi Shabbos? You hear what he says? It says in Yerushalmi that a toilish dog min hayam on Shabbos, if you take out a fish from water, you would think you're chayiv because of tzad, which is true, tzeda, hunting. But the Yerushalmi says you're chayiv also mishum toilish, koitzer, harvesting. Like when you cut fruits, when you cut a fruit off a tree. Where you're harvesting. Because the fish is considered one with the water. So it's like you're plucking. It's like you're separating, because it's like, it's beautiful.
Water should be the same thing.
When to be what?
If we take water out of the sea, it should be the same toilish. Why by fishing? I mean, so everything is one. The fish in the water is one.
No, because the water could survive outside of water, because it's water. The fish can't survive outside of water. The water, when you take it out of water, it's water. It's water wherever it is, it's going to survive. The fish, when you took it out of water, it's like you take a grape off, you killed it. You took the tomato off, it's dead. You plucked it. The mayim. Just like in Boirer, al derech in Boirer. Yeah. Right. Ois chiyus. It's also like in Boirer, when you separate challah from challah, it's not Boirer. It's challah and challah. I take the psoilus from the toiv. It's a chiluk now. It's a chiluk, and here it's more because it's death. It's shekoyach for the hara.
Yerushalmi. I can find what it is, but Yerushalmi is Shabbos.
But Rabbi is teaching us that he's also connected to it.
So that's the person. A person is not a dag and not yabasha. It's the chibur. Sula mutzav artza v'roshim agi hashamayma. Yabasha, dry land, is a place of ego. That's the definition of Olam Hazeh. Yiparit, Pirut. Olam Atzilus is Yam, and Malchus is two. We'll soon see the next stage. It's not so pashut yet. We'll soon see the next stage. Yeah.
Person to survive needs to eat and drink. Right?
Yeah.
So we're also connected, like the fish. The fish needs to survive to be in the water.
That's a good question.
Both are not aware.
Yeah, no. We're aware that we need the earth. We all eat, either we eat vegetation, or if you eat animal products, or you eat, we come from the earth. We're aware that we need the earth. We're aware that we need oxygen. But the fact that I'm aware I need the earth doesn't make me feel that I want to be inside the earth invisible. On the contrary, I want the earth to serve me. The earth is a hachana for me. By the fish, it's invisible. It's submerged inside the water to the point that you don't see it. A person also needs the earth. And if you completely detach a person from earth, you don't give them anything, or from oxygen, they can't live. But there's two things. First of all, it's not that intuitively I feel my kinship with earth. I have to understand it. I have to learn about it. I have to intuitively, ich bin ich. I know I'll be seichel. You understand? The fish intuitively, this, don't take me away. That's number one.
The person only needs to eat when he's hungry.
A person, when I'm hungry, I need to eat, and then I need the earth, and I understand it. But intuitively, I am I. On the contrary, I want the earth to serve me. By the fish, intuitively, that's number one. Number two, just like physically, the fish is invisible.
Not to the fish.
Right. To the person standing outside of the yam.
We're also invisible for the fish.
Huh? You're saying we're invisible for the fish, right? You're saying under the water, everything is visible.
Fish can't see us, we can't see the fish. It goes both ways.
the fish can't see us, and we can't see the fish. Emes. Emes. You're asking a good shaila, but by the Yam, there's one cover that covers everything. It's like they're all under one chuppah. In Yabasha, everything is self-contained. Even though the oxygen, connects us all, yeah. Tzlach Rabbi. Pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have you.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.